You're listening to the Mile You're In podcast. Everything running related from 100 meters to 100 miles. And now, here's your host, Phil Patterson Jr.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Mile You're In podcast. As always, I appreciate you for listening, subscribing, sharing the podcast episodes. All the support and love that I receive from you guys, I truly appreciate it. It does mean a lot. Before we get into the topic, again, to Becky from Miami and Francine from Pembroke Pines, my two Patreon supporters, I appreciate the both of you. And now to the topic. This one was tough. It's something that had been on my heart for a long time, especially since last year, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But it's about feeling safe while running in fear, running fearless. As I've gotten up early on Sunday mornings to start my long runs, my safety has been at the forefront of my thoughts more than ever before. Typically, I wouldn't think twice. I figured just because I was sticking to main roads that were fairly well lit, that I'd be okay. Why would anybody bother me? I'm not wearing anything flashy, not drawing attention to myself, just out for a run. But the more I've run new areas and come across many sketchy people or areas, it's made me start to think twice. As I did research on the stats of runners being attacked, I was actually surprised. In my lack of awareness, I discovered that the cockiness I have as a man is not something I should just rely on. The amount of men that have been attacked while running was actually surprising. I assumed when I read the titles that the article would describe an older male, maybe 60 and older, but that wasn't always the case. Attackers aren't just preying on the older runners, they're attacking men my age and younger. Maybe it's the vulnerability of us being caught off guard, fatigued from being mid-workout and assuming we're not at full strength. Maybe it's the thinking that the younger we are, the more expensive items we may have on us, or the less aware we might be of our surroundings. But then it went even further as I continued researching. I hate to admit this, but living in America and seeing how divided this country is, sometimes as a white male, I have this sense of privilege that nobody will mess with me. But as research was opening my eyes more and more, I realized I'm no safer just because of my skin color. In fact, depending on the area, I could be more at risk to be attacked. To some, I get it. The bald head, the tattooed arms, the long beard, it gives off a certain stereotype. I see the way some people look at me as I'm approaching them on a sidewalk. Sometimes I can see the high alertness in their eyes and their body language. When I first started working on this episode, I was going into it with the mind frame of being white and a man, that I have this sense of freedom to run wherever, whenever, that I was safer. Unfortunately, that's not the case. To discover that these attacks occur outside of the US wasn't necessarily shocking, but how often they do was. And it wasn't just the tourists being targeted. These were citizens on everyday typical routines being attacked. I think back now about how many times I've been on vacation in an unfamiliar town, going out for an early morning run before sunrise, not thinking about what could happen to me. As vulnerable as the research made me feel, I now know there's still that sense of safety I feel as a man. And it's because I consider myself strong. I can lean on my years of amateur wrestling to defend myself, my somewhat fast speed to outrun someone on foot. But that's assuming an attack will be predicted, that I'll see it coming and have time to prepare, or that they won't pull out a gun. The amount of stories I read where the runner was on alert of their surroundings yet still were attacked without seeing or hearing the attacker was actually concerning. Another thing I was thinking was that this is something new, because people are starting to get out more and exercise more, especially after being stuck indoors for the last couple of years due to COVID restrictions. But again, research showed me that this has been a concern for runners forever. I came across some attacks that were considered to be nationally well known from media coverage. And after reading about them, I focused on the years they occurred and where they were located. And it just confirmed that this is an everywhere problem. Like, these are some of the high profile ones I came across. In 1984 in Oakland, California. 1985, Millington, Tennessee. 1997, Friendswood, Texas. 2002, Washington, D.C. 2016, New York City, New York. 2016, Princeton, Massachusetts. 2018, Brooklyn, Iowa. 2018, Rus, Bulgaria. 2019, Crete, Greece. 2020, Satilla Shores, Georgia. The last one being the one that just added the fuel to racial tensions and really sparked the interest in researching more for this specific episode. Ahmaud Arbery. Doing something he's done many times before in an area he's done it many times before. Although this wasn't like many of the other stories I studied, it was a reminder that for some, because of their gender or skin color, they're more at risk to be attacked. Attacks aren't always some pervert trying to sexually assault someone or a punk trying to steal valuables that you may have on you. Sometimes they're plain and simple hate crimes. And that's where I go back to having that selfish confidence that I won't be bothered while running because I'm a white man. That makes me sick to my stomach the more I think about it, and even more so saying it out loud. Another example was Dr. Peng Wang, who was running in England. When a car drove past, two men were yelling racial remarks from the car, the typical "go back to your country" comments. He shouted back, which led them to following him, attacking him physically. Now, this was a professor at a local university, not some tourist. Like Ahmaud, he was running in his hometown like any other day on any other run. Fortunately for him, though, he wasn't murdered. His decision to yell back can easily be criticized looking back now, but in the moment, we've all done it. It was an eye-opening reminder that road rage can lead to pedestrians being attacked as well as drivers. It boils over and eventually something triggers them to go from verbal to physical abuse. The amount of times I've cussed out someone that almost hit me, although it's justified, makes me realize it's better in those moments to internalize it and keep moving. You're never going to win versus someone driving a lethal weapon. But I want to circle back to the original intention of this episode. I have so many female friends that run, and hearing their stories are always disturbing. I recently saw a friend post on social media, and my privilege as a man made me question why she did her training run the way she did. Her response was humbling. I was honestly embarrassed that I even asked the question. Although it was asked respectfully and her answer was just as respectful, it was the concern I could feel just reading her response that humbled me so much. That fear isn't stopping women from running though. But they are going to great lengths beyond the obvious smart choices, like running without music, alerting people as to when and where they're running, and running where it's lit and busy. Just trying to feel more prepared and safer while pursuing what they love to do. It's unfortunate that it has to come to this. Reading stories where cops would stop and warn female runners that they should carry a knife or mace while running in those areas because attackers are known to occur. That's disturbing. It reminded me of the long run I recently did from Boca Raton to Delray Beach, a 30-mile loop starting in the pitch black of 3 a.m. Along a good 8 to 10 mile stretch of that run, police presence was constant. They drove up and down the road like clockwork. It made me feel safe, but I did question why I was never stopped. Although I'm glad I wasn't, I had nothing to hide and wouldn't have minded if it meant them doing their job to ensure I wasn't at risk for doing anything wrong. But that privileged mentality kicked in again with everything that's happened in the last few years. I started wondering if I would have had a different experience if I was a person of color. I ran through areas where cars were parked feet away with their lights off, but I could hear the engine running. So obviously somebody was sitting in the vehicle. I kept going on, even though I was on high alert, but it made me wonder about how a person of color or a woman might handle that situation. Would they turn around or would they keep going? It's not always as easy as just going to the other side of the street to create more distance, because these attackers have strategies, and sometimes they're not alone. Despite there being more articles on men being attacked, doing Google searches with different keywords constantly led to women's stories dominating the first few pages of the results that I found. Stories I had vaguely remembered hearing about, many I never did. There's Molly Tibbetts, who was abducted and killed while running through her hometown in Iowa. Wendy Karina Martinez, who was stabbed to death while jogging in Washington, D.C. Karina Vetrano, who was brutally and sexually assaulted and murdered while running in Queens. Vanessa Marcotte, who was killed during a jog in Massachusetts and later found just a mile from her home. And Trisha Maley, who's known as the Central Park Jogger. There are so many attacks that don't make it to national media, and the world remains slightly naive to the high rate of these attacks. The purpose of this episode was to raise awareness, but the more research I did and the more I prepared for this, my concern became fearing people out of running, especially someone considering starting for the first time. And that's the total opposite of what I want to do. If anything, the hope is to do what has been done to me, to be more careful. Even more careful than you think you need to be. It's better to be more prepared than not prepared enough. Over the years, I've done little things here and there. I felt safe enough, but after reading all these stories, I feel that I could definitely make some more changes to increase my safety and decrease the danger in any attempt to attack me. Unfortunately, as secure as you can be, there will always be the concerns in the back of your mind, especially if you're a person of color or a woman. It really sucks that people of color and women have to live in fear like this while just trying to enjoy something that many of us can enjoy with a peace of mind. I specifically, have unknowingly taken for granted safety on a run. The fact that many have to resort to running on a treadmill, in their garage, always during daylight, just making something that should be fun a slight inconvenience, all because this world is full of evil people that tend to prey on certain people. It sucks. It's unfair. It makes me feel guilty at times, especially that I can just so confidently head out for a run with the cocky attitude that I'll be fine. My hope is that we put more effort into being as cautious as possible when going for a run. For ultra runners like me, long runs require running into the late night or early morning. For many of us, even short runs just have to take place during unsafe hours because of our schedules and what time we do actually have available. The best thing we can do is be more conscious and prepared. There's many tips and suggestions all over the internet that can make recommendations on how to run safer. Being a veteran runner, I actually knew many of the ones I came across in these articles, but still discovered a handful of new ones that I never even considered. We all head out for the run, not thinking twice about the fact that we might not make it home. Obviously, that's not the mentality you want, but it's a reality. Like many things in this world, evil people ruin good things. For many, the run is for our mental health improvement. This type of concern is the last thing you need. The unwanted stress during what's supposed to be a stress-reducing time. Again, my hope is we'll stay as safe and as prepared as possible while no longer taking for granted coming home safely from a run. As this research taught me, it doesn't matter where you are, what time of day it is, what color or gender you are, how short or long the run is. If someone has an intention to attack and harm, they will make the attempt. The best we can do is prepare ourselves to be ready to defend ourselves as much as possible. Us continuing to run despite the risks prove that we will not let evil win or ruin our moments of joy. So until the next episode, be smart and stay safe.
Thanks for listening to the Mile You're In podcast. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check out previous episodes and more at heelstriker954.com.